Howdy again everyone, and here is a lens that somehow I didn't end up testing for whatever reason, the Sigma 70-200mm f2.8 DG OS HSM Sports. A few people have been requesting a review of this one, so I got in touch with Sigma UK, who kindly loaned a copy to me for a couple of weeks for testing. Many thanks to them. I took it on a brief little sojourn to the east coast of England for a week, as well as topping off at Cardiff Bay on the way home, and I was delighted with the sample pictures I took. It's been around for a few years now, being first released in 2018, and it's designed for digital SLR cameras, although of course it can also be mounted onto mirrorless cameras if you have the correct adapter. It's not a cheap lens by any means, it's about £1,180 in the UK or about $1,500 in the US. Still, that undercuts the price of Canon's EF equivalent by about $600 and Nikon's AFS equivalent lens by about $900, so if this Sigma competitor is any good, it could save you a lot of money. And a 70-200mm f2.8 is probably the most important professional model of camera lens available today. It's a real bread and butter lens for event photographers, sports and reportage photographers, and portrait and wedding photographers, but it could also be used for landscape work and video making. Well, you get the idea. It is versatile, and particularly when you zoom into 200mm, it can give you some very deeply out of focus backgrounds. When it comes to build quality, this lens is big and tough, not to mention surprisingly weighty, coming in at 1.8 kilograms or nearly 4 pounds. That is noticeably more heavy than Canon's EF mount 70-200mm f2.8 lenses, which weigh nearly a pound less, and Canon's RF mount 70-200mm f2.8 weighs just over half as much. So one of the main prices you'll have to pay with this Sigma lens is portability. It really is quite weighty. Putting that aside though, this thing sure is tough. It has weather sealing throughout, including a sealing gasket at the rear lens mount. It has a heavy duty and well designed metal tripod collar, although I do wish it were removable to save a bit on weight when it's not needed. Then you get a number of controls for autofocus and image stabilization. Let's look at stabilization first, or OS as Sigma call it. Here is some footage with it turned off and now turned on to mode 1, which I found to be the most effective. As you can see, it's making a very nice difference indeed. Even at 200mm your image is pretty steady, although video makers might still wish to use a tripod for best results. And if you have a Sigma USB dock, the lens's image stabilization and parts of its autofocus are customizable. The rubberized focus ring works smoothly but a little heavily. As this is an older lens, it's physically connected to the focus mechanism, not electronically connected, and as a result it works quite precisely and linearly. As you can see here, the lens exhibits quite a bit of focus breathing, zooming in quite a lot as you focus more closely, no matter what focal length you're shooting at, and that will annoy video makers. Some good news though is that the lens's autofocus motor is very fast, as you can see here, and mostly accurate. The lens's zoom ring is also rubberized and works nice and smoothly too. The very end of the lens barrel is also rubberized, and that's always a nice touch to me, as it reduces the chances of the whole thing cracking open if you accidentally hit it against a hard surface. The lens comes with one of Sigma's excellent carry bags and a deep, high-quality lens hood, which is not pictured here. Its filter size is a larger than usual 82mm wide. Overall, well, it's fantastic build quality here, but the thing is a bit heavy. Alright, let's look at image quality. Can this Sigma lens be competitively sharp? I'll be testing it adapted onto my Canon EOS R5 with its challenging, full-frame 45MP sensor. In-camera corrections are turned on. We'll start at 70mm and f2.8. Right away in the middle, we see excellent sharpness and contrast. The corners look virtually as sharp. What a good start. Stop down to f4 for just a minuscule improvement there. The lens stays this sharp down to f11, but f16 looks a little softer due to the effects of diffraction. Let's zoom in halfway to 135mm. The middle of the image at f2.8 is noticeably softer than at 70mm, but still reasonably sharp. corner image quality looks about the same. Stop down to f4 though for excellent image quality to re-emerge from the corners and back to the middle. Again, the image stays this sharp down to f11. And finally, let's zoom all the way into 200mm. At f2.8, the excellent sharpness we originally saw in the middle is thankfully back. Image quality over in the corners is noticeably softer than the middle, but still fairly good. At f4, the corners look about the same, but stop down to f5.6 or f8 to see that excellent sharpness re-emerging. Overall, this lens is sharp most of the time at most apertures in most areas of the image. There was a little bump at 135mm and f2.8, and the corners at 200mm are not razor sharp, but very few people in their right mind would seriously complain because, on the whole, there's loads of resolution to be seen here and very good contrast. Alright, let's turn off those in-camera corrections and take a look at distortion and vignetting. At 70mm, we see only negligible barrel distortion here and a little darkness around the corners at f2.8. Stop down to f4 or f5.6 for those corners to brighten. Zoom into 200mm and we are treated to some moderately strong pincushion distortion. At f2.8, corners are pretty dark here. Stop down to f4 and we quickly see much more brightness. It's an average performance for distortion and vignetting there, thankfully no nasty surprises though. The lens's minimum focus distance is 1.2 meters, so you can get fairly close to smaller subjects at 200mm. At f2.8, close-up image quality is rather soft unfortunately, with blue colour fringing. Stop down to f4 for an improvement, and at f5.6 and especially f8, the image becomes very sharp again. Let's see how the lens works against bright light. It's just an okay performance here. We see some noticeable but not serious flaring at wider angles. Zoom in and it gets worse, so just an average performance here. I don't really test telephoto lenses for coma levels, although perhaps I might do one day, but I was curious about this thing's sun stars. Stop down to f8 and sun stars are just about beginning to form themselves here. At f16 they're looking pretty nice, and at f18 they look quite strong, as you can see. Next, bokeh. For the past 10 years or so, it doesn't seem to have been a problem for 70 to 200mm lenses to get you some really smooth quality bokeh, and this lens thankfully is no exception. In all my test pictures, including extra ones that didn't make it into this review, this thing's out of focus backgrounds look gorgeous, about as smooth and pleasing as Barry White's voice. Anyone still listen to Barry White? Anyway, related to bokeh comes longitudinal chromatic aberration. Here's another little weak spot. It's rather strong at f2.8, with some false colours clearly emerging. They remain at f4, are reduced though at f5.6, and at f8 they are largely gone. So overall, the Sigma 70 to 200mm f2.8 Sports is an excellent lens with one or two little weak points here and there. Its build quality is excellent, its autofocus and image stabilization very good. Most of all, it's an impressively sharp lens with pretty gorgeously soft looking bokeh, and really for a lens like this, those are the key considerations for any professional photographer. There are a few small niggles which, for the price you're paying for the lens, do prevent it from getting my highest recommendation though. For example, its heavy weight, its focus breathing, its slightly weak close-up image quality and longitudinal chromatic aberration, but generally speaking, the lens is very sharp, works very well, and its price is quite acceptable. If you can't quite afford an official Canon or Nikon 70 to 200mm f2.8 lens, then this one from Sigma will suit you really nicely, saving you lots of money, and so it still comes recommended. You know what? Maybe I complain about heavy lenses too much. I really need to work out much more. Perhaps I should welcome the challenge and see it as an opportunity to build up my biceps. I'm sure my wife would appreciate it. Anyway, what definitely does not build up my biceps is sitting in my office editing exclusive videos for my Patreon supporters, but I'm gonna do it anyway because I really appreciate their generosity in keeping this channel going. To do your bit and to get special videos and other bonus content, take a look in the description below and join the gang. Take care and God bless everyone.